Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. Today we are answering the question, how do you master repeat and referral business? And we're going to be giving you 3 secrets for real estate pros. And I want to start out today's podcast by reminding you of something we talked about on the show yesterday, just to really emphasize the importance of this. 92% of all your business is going to come from centers of influence and past clients. Over time, it's even going to be a higher percent. And by that, I mean virtually all of it's going to come from centers of influence and past clients. There was a report, or reports that NAR does, but there was one that came out most recently that showed that anyone in the business for 5 years or more gets virtually all of their business from centers of influence and past clients. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I'm a brand new agent. I have absolutely no past clients. And you're right, but you do have a centers of influence that you can always be expanding. People you know at the gym, your neighbors, old neighbors, new neighbors, things like that. And we're going to be talking about that on today's podcast. But just remember the statistic that we shared with you on the podcast yesterday. 92% of everyone chooses the real estate professional, or any professional for that matter, that they're going to use based on who they already know or a referral from a trusted friend or advisor, leaving less than 10% of everyone that's ever going to respond to any kind of marketing, promotion, branding, or whatever to choose someone that they might consider working with.
That's exactly right. And that's been proven time and time again. No matter who does the surveys or the reports, whether it's NAR or anybody else, the numbers all come out about exactly what you said. Now, for those of you who are listening saying, well, I don't really have either any past clients yet, or I have very few past clients, when you're a part of Premier Coaching, we have something called the Center of Influence List Builder. And it's literally a list of questions that goes through your life, right? So maybe when you go to the bank, you talk to the bank manager. When you go to the pharmacy, you talk to the pharmacist, obviously. You have friends at your kid's school. There's an endless list. Who cuts your hair? Who does your nails? Et cetera, et cetera. And so the goal of doing that list, again, as part of Premier Coaching, is to build at least 100 people on your initial contact list. Now, if you're a grizzled veteran and you've already got 400 or 500 people in your database, well, it doesn't hurt to go through that checklist again and say, you know what? I changed my hairdresser. Maybe I need to update that. Or maybe the guy that takes care of all of my inspections needs to be on the list for a professional center of influence. So we help you with that list.
And what do you send to them, or how do you communicate with them? Obviously, you want you calling, but as your list grows larger, and frankly, as your list grows, so that some of the people on your list you don't have that close of a relationship with, it's someone that knows you and you know them, but let's just say that's the extent of it. Somebody you know at Starbucks or something like that. Still add them to your list, and what you could do is you could create targeted campaigns on Facebook and things like that, where you can start essentially having a little list that you load into Facebook on a monthly basis, and you're going to target all your real estate related posts, and those people are going to start seeing them. We also are big proponents of newsletters, whether it's a digital one or ideally a paper newsletter. Some sort of direct mail campaign always is very effective. And obviously calling, doing annualized parties, things like that. We're going to talk about all that on today's podcast. But the thing I want you to keep in mind is the first thing I started with today, that virtually all of your business is going to be coming from people who know you, that you've done successful transactions with, or a referral from a trusted friend or advisor. And remember, that doesn't necessarily mean the referral is coming from someone who you have done business with. It's just somebody that knows that you're in the real estate business. Keep these things in mind as we go through these points. And remember, if you really want drill down information on all this, which you will, you're going to want to get our notes. And the best way to get our notes is just subscribe to our free newsletter, which is harrisrealestatedaily.com. And remember, when you go to harrisrealestatedaily.com, you've just got to drop in your email address, and then you have to go to your main email and you have to double opt in, and then you'll start getting all of our notes. And we are adding a lot of exclusive content. I actually wrote, me and ChatGPT wrote an article about all the changes to TCPA, do not call, all these things. And that article has only been published in our newsletters exclusively for newsletter subscribers. So make sure you go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. All right, Julie, let's roll right in.
Yes, we're first going to do 3 ways to polish your database, and then we're going to do 3 strategies to grow your database. So those of you who are getting the notes, follow along. Point number 1, perfecting these 3 things about your database. Number 1, Have an organized database with names, numbers, email addresses, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and other support information for each person on your list. Now, you don't need a fancy CRM. You can use KV Core, for example, especially if you're an EXP agent. Call each person to update the rest of their profile. It's a great excuse to connect. Make that first or next contact. And you can, of course, use your Ford conversation outline. That's family, occupation, recreation, and dreams to make these calls really fruitful. That helps you to organically talk about real estate and, of course, ask the all-important question, who do you know who could use my help buying or selling real estate?
And remember, in Premier Coaching, we do give you a 12-month Center of Influence and Past Client Action Plan, events you should be doing, conversations you should be having. We actually give you scripts. So we're not leaving it up to you completely. You have to do the work, right? But we're not leaving it up to you what to say or creating the blueprint for your Center of Influence and Past Client Plan. We've created it for you. It's waiting for you in Premier Coaching. Premier Coaching is free for you to join right now. Just go to premiercoaching.com or click the link below in today's show description. Julie?
All right, point number 2, or number 2 thing to clean up for some of you, speak with all of your contacts regularly. Now, you think that goes without saying, but I'm going to demonstrate why that is. Regularly means face-to-face, voice-to-voice, real contacts. Remembering that a contact is a conversation with a decision-making adult about real estate. It's not just, hey, how's it going? You do have to talk about real estate. Refer to our coaching and podcast. We just talked about the Ford script. But for example, when we talk about regularly and systematically, let's say you've got 200 people in your database and you speak with 10 per day on work days. That means you can talk to 100% of your list every month. What would that do to your repeat and referral business? Now, if 10 is too many, even making 5 contacts per day will make you speak with 100% of your database every 60 days, again, assuming a 200-person list.
Now, as your list grows larger, we definitely want you to be communicating with them on a monthly basis. At the very least, do something digital. Frankly, something in the mail, depending on your individual market. Mailer actually is incredibly powerful. If there's not a bunch of other agents that are doing mailers, a paper newsletter is going to be more powerful than you can imagine. Again, because when you're providing lots of good, relevant real estate information, home values, comps, cost per square foot analysis, and all
what's
this good
hot
stuff.
and what's not kind of thing.
Exactly. They're going to love that, again, assuming there's not 1,000 newsletters hitting their mailbox every month. And then supplement with doing some digital follow-ups, letting them, for example, you're going to publish your newsletter on Facebook, and then you can essentially maybe create a digital campaign on Facebook, letting those folks in that list know about the newsletter that's going to be hitting their mailbox soon. And if you would like the newsletter as well, please send me your address. And then obviously making those phone calls every single day. The combination of those things, along with some of the annual get-togethers that Julie's about to expose you guys to, are unbelievably powerful. You just have to live under the assumption that if you're not getting virtually 90% of your business from centers of influence and past clients, you're going to have to essentially take it more seriously and build it up at putting a plan in place like what we've created for you. A lot of what agents will do is they'll go with a passive thing too quick, and they'll just send them digital newsletters, and they won't make the phone calls. In other words, they're going to do the easiest stuff. They're not going to do the real work of real estate, and that's the reason they're never going to get the real results.
It's interesting. You mentioned the paper newsletter. You and I had this happen, and I think you can identify, just as I can, coaching clients that have had this happen, where they use the paper version, in your actual mailbox, not your email mailbox, the one on your house. And for whatever reason, they got away from it. They stopped it. They made it quarterly instead of monthly. And what happens? The people that are used to getting it called and said, where's my newsletter? I look forward to getting that. I watch the stats. I watch the sales. I want to know what's hot and what's not in my market. They actually do pay attention. So for those of you who are thinking, oh, well, that's really old school, it actually still exists because people really like it.
You had a father and son team in a very prestigious area of Florida. You don't mention names, right?
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
And something island, right? Yeah. So they had this condo development of more, $1 million plus condos. And it was a huge, we're talking thousands and thousands. Probably, what would you say, Julie, 50, 60% were absentee owners?
At least, yeah.
Second or third homes,
Yeah,
people
for
that are, Canadian snowbirds and whatnot.
Yep.
So they created this newsletter, which was more analytical than, frankly, I thought would be successful. It was very statistical, analytical. I think one of them was an ex-accountant, the dad, if I remember correctly.
Very
or
content
something.
rich, yeah.
Very content rich. But they absolutely dominated with that because they're the only ones that are providing the information. And what they were doing is they were mailing to all those absentee owners. They weren't doing the dumb thing and mailing to the addresses of the people, that were not ever in the condos except for maybe a few months of the year, right? They're mailing them to their home addresses. How do you find absentee owner information? We tell you how to do that in Premier Coaching, but I'll give you a shortcut for it too. Absentee owner information can be obtained when you see where the property tax bill for the subject property is being mailed. So if the property tax bill is being mailed to, say, Ohio, and the address is in Florida, you can pretty much surmise that the Ohio address is their permanent address. So just keep that in mind and think out of the box and realize the massive potential you have for doing something like this.
Yeah, very good, very well said, and that's a great reminder of how well that can work. I would say even especially in second and third home markets, because that's like their local boots on the ground.
Well, you're going to get me talking about more examples. Robin and Michael Gordon on the main line in Philadelphia, who we put, were one of our first coaching clients like forever ago, 20-some years ago. They are one of the top probably 20 real estate teams in the nation. They've just done, obviously billions. And well, one of their key lead drivers is a direct mail campaign that they do, I think, twice a month or maybe once a month, which is a beautiful jumbo glossy card. But it's really heavily laden with market statistics and information that's really going on in the market, but real-time marketing information, not just a bunch of, the usual Mickey Mouse, here's your recipe and here's some, all that stuff. Actual real drilled down, because a lot of their, their real estate clients are very sophisticated Wall Street types, people that are going to expect the information to be really detailed, and that's what they deliver. So again, cater appropriately. But if you're in a neighborhood that has a lot of, frankly, maybe the people aren't that analytical, let's say, and it's a more of a family-friendly type neighborhood where, when you're driving around, you just see kids and kids stuff everywhere. Well, in a neighborhood like that, you're probably going to want to have your direct mail campaign be something more about the kids' activities, what's going on with the, school lunches, the football things.
Read
and things
your
like
audience.
That. Read your audience, exactly. Yeah. Don't assume, this is a huge mistake. Don't assume just because I told you something that Michael and Robin Gordon are doing for their very, highly educated, mostly analytical.
Super high end.
Exactly. It's going to work in your neighborhood where every third person has a golden retriever. It's just not going to be the same type of messaging. So cater appropriately. Of course, we teach you guys how to do this in Premier Coaching. The link down below to join Premier Coaching in the show description is right there. Just click on it or just go to premiercoaching.com. And yes, you can join right now for free.
All right. Our third thing to work on with your center of influence is to expand it systematically. Remember that 10%, at least 10% of the people in your database will do business with you or refer business to you every year, assuming you communicate with them. And we've just given you a lot of examples of that. That means if your database is 100 people strong, you'll have at least 10 transactions every year from them. 200 people in your list equals 20 transactions and so forth. But you do have to do this on purpose. The existence of your database by itself does not give you new leads. You have to do something with it. And remember, and we're going to talk about exactly how to expand in a second, smaller is better. Tim talked a lot about this on yesterday's podcast. Don't dump random what you're calling leads into your database. Now, past clients, friends, family, neighbors, people in your sphere of influence do belong on the list, but random people who you haven't talked to don't.
We made that mistake.
We did.
When we got our first year in real estate, we used to do a ton of open houses. We'd have everyone sign a book. We put them on our center of influence list, and we started mailing them things. And we kept tracks at tabs inside our rudimentary CRM about essentially where our original contact was. And the people who did business with us were not the people that were just randos that we met, because those people were leads. We had to learn to treat different people different ways. A lead is frankly worthless for the most part, unless you actually have had a meaningful conversation, pre-qualified and things like that. Where we got our business were the people that knew us, our neighbors, old neighbors, the people that Julie played in orchestras with, the people we knew at the gym, things
Real
like that. Real conversations where, like, for example, if I were to go into your 20-mile radius of where you live, and I were to show people a picture of you, how many of them would know the picture, know you? Oh, I recognize Bob. Then, well, I recognize him. Okay, there's the, that's kind of generalized knowledge. Oh, that's Bob. He works at, eXp Realty. You guys see the difference? The ones that go in your centers of influence and past client lists are the ones that at the very least know your name, that you're familiarity with, and the closer in relationship you have with them, obviously, the better.
Absolutely. And yesterday you emphasized not dumping every digital quote lead or contact into some, holding tank of a drip system. If you haven't talked to them, you really shouldn't be entering them in there.
Well, you said it right there, Jules. The agents with the fewest number of actual leads, pre-qualified leads, where you know their motivation, you know their time frame, you know all the things that we teach you guys how to do in Premier Coaching. The fewest number of leads, and anytime I talk with an agent and they said they have a lot of leads, what that's telling me is they're not pre-qualifying and they're probably not doing a lot of transactions because they're not having meaningful conversations and pulling out, essentially the ones that are actually motivated to transact, and no one has taught them, or someone has taught them, they just didn't listen, the difference between actually what, essentially is a contact, which is what most of you guys have in your CRMs, versus an actual lead. A lead, again, is someone who you fully pre-qualified. You need to raise the bar, otherwise you're going to waste your time and energy and potential on people that are never going to transact with you.
Well, that's right. I'm going to give you an example of one of my favorite agents in Phoenix, Jeannie Adenolfi. Okay, so yes, she does have a database, which is mostly her smartphone. That's more like her contact list, old school phone book. That's where she keeps the data. But her leads, as we define them, live on a whiteboard in front of her in her office. She has 8 to 10 at all times. Those are people who she can tell you who they're working with. Are they cash? Are they not cash? Who's their lender? What's their time frame? What's their motivation? Are they a buyer and a seller? Those are people who are real leads.
And that's, by the way,
right?
Most of you will only really need ever maybe 10 real leads.
That's right. Different time frames.
But I will suggest and strongly recommend, and if we were coaching you, I would be very, convincing. Exactly. Make your dominant energies be focused on listing leads, not on buyer leads. And we've talked about this infinitum on this show and in our coaching, because at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a buyer that has to buy. Buyers can change their mind. Interest rates go up, interest rates go down. It's too cold outside. Look at homes. You guys, you know what I'm talking about. A buyer can stay renting. A buyer can stay in their house, living in their mom's garage, the whole thing. A seller, when you learn how to chase listings, a seller, there's real reasons why a seller has to sell, and the decision to sell is really not in their control. Usually it's a financial issue, it's a got relocated issue. Hey, how about this? It's somebody who just found out they're furloughed in Washington, D.C. and lost their job, furloughed, AKA fired, because they weren't showing up to work in the first place. But you guys get the point. So when it comes to sellers, there's actual sellers that when you ask them, is selling this home something you absolutely positively have to do, or is this something you want to do? They'll say, I have to sell my house. A buyer, you'll get a buyer that's strongly motivated, but even the most motivated buyer can change their mind. So definitely put all your best efforts on listings, not on buyers, because if you're wanting to sell, say, for example, 20 buyers, you're going to have to work so much harder, have so many more conversations, so many more leads, because so many of them are just going to ebb and flow. There's nothing for sale. You guys get the point here, right? Again, learn how to be listing agents.
All right, so if we know that 10% of your list will either transact with you or refer someone to you, that means that having a not huge but robust list is important. How are you going to grow your list? Let's say that you did our checklist, you're a Premier Coaching client, you went through all of the paces on that, and you're at about 100 people, but you want to get to be 200 or 250 people. How do you expand it? And this is something I love working with coaching clients on. We're going to do A, B, and C here. There's 3 categories for you to expand your center of influence. Number A, things that you like to do anyway. That's at the top of the list because we know you're more likely to do it. These are hobbies, sports, arts, maybe working out at the gym, going on organized hikes. You're going to be around like-minded people talking about mutual interests, using the Ford script, again, family, occupation, recreation, dreams, and that's going to be very natural in an environment where you're surrounded by people who like the same things you do. How do you find those things? Well, you can use meetup.com to find things that interest you. You do a zip code and a radius. You can try out new clubs, expand your contacts. If I was not coaching and podcasting with you all the time and I was doing this, I would do a French Bulldog rescue meetup. I would do some more charitable animal things. I would do 3 or 4 times what we do with the school and the kids.
You mean if you were selling real estate?
If I was selling real estate,
right.
And I had this was my thing, I was expanding, I would do that. One of my coaching clients, Tammy Irby's doing a variety of different smaller get-togethers to nurture her database. She does dinner parties. She does charitable events. She has a different idea every month, and it's working really well.
Well, but let's even drill down even farther, right? So you'd probably do some sort of, and it already is in our community, a women's organization meetup.
Yes, definitely.
And maybe tie it to a charity or things like that. Put yourself in the center, become a literal micro influencer in your community, where you're putting yourself in the center of a lot of people that are wanting to meet up and get together and do good in the community. And that's going to obviously pay dividends in all kinds of intentional and unintentional ways.
Right, and be a connector. And that it's funny you mentioned that, because I do like to do that on our little community thing. It's important to be that connector. So I'll give you an example. Somebody has a whole bunch of like old blankets and things that they're just going to donate. So I would connect them to a pet charity who always needs blankets, towels, cozy stuff for dogs. Now, these two people know each other, but through me. These are easy connections for you to make if you're staying frosty. And it is a really good use of social media, too.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay.
Well, but Julia, hopefully what they're learning from all this is all the things we've asked them to do so far cost basically nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah. And always our marketing and passive lead generation ideas like what we're giving you guys right now, you'll notice the recurring theme is we don't want you spending a lot of money, because the things that generally speaking you're spending a lot of money on are the least effective things, because they're the things that frankly they're speculative. We're asking you to put yourself directly in the way of folks that you can be of service to. Maybe it's transacting, maybe it's finding someone to take a donation, or maybe it's whatever it is. You guys get the point? I mean, Julie and I recently had eye surgery and had our lenses replaced. Now we never have to wear glasses again. And we are collecting all of our glasses. And between the two of us, we have probably, what do you think, 30 pairs of glasses?
Probably over the years, yeah.
And so we're going to donate all of these glasses. Well, we're trying to find a way to donate the glasses. And Julie's been poking around to trying to find a charity here in our community in Puerto Rico. The frames are all in good shape, And and so she's then making all new contacts, all these different people. And you guys get the point? You could be doing things like that too. When we sold real estate, we would do, like we did every year, we did a Christmas toy drive. We did
Food
something
drive.
right after September 11th. We did
It was a food drive, but it was a patriotic theme.
It was a patriotic thing. Yeah, that's right. And we did every year, and around Halloween, we did a pumpkin drive.
Yep.
Where we'd sell pumpkins, and we tied that into the American Red Cross, things like that. And it really does pay dividends. And I have to tell you, it's frustrating too. And I'll tell you why. Because we were doing direct mail into this community, New Albany Country Club area in New Albany, Ohio. And so we were doing a lot of direct mail. And the direct mail was expensive. It was always like, oh my gosh, kind of thing. Every year you had to redo it, redesign it. It took a lot of time, energy. And, it's speculative as hell. And then we would do one little party, or we do one little something or another like that, and we get like 3 or 4 deals from it. You guys get the point? And we talked about this yesterday. We talk about it all the time. And we would even get even more business just from essentially when we got those potential new relationships, calling them back right away, furiously fast lead follow-up. The simplest things are the things that are always going to pay you the most amount of money in any business, but especially in this business, because simply, following up with people, having meaningful conversations, and doing it quickly and professionally, that by itself is such a differentiator in a world where everyone wants to throw you into some CRM and never actually have a conversation with you that's voice to voice, let alone belly to belly.
That's right. You mentioned events, and as a Premier Coaching client, they get the 12-month Center of Influence plan where we have these suggestions, some of them seasonal, sometimes holiday-oriented, but that's something you get in Premier.
Yeah, again, guys, you got to take this stuff seriously, because if you're in the business and if you've been in it for 5 years and you're not getting almost all of your closed transactions from centers of influence and past clients, you just got to accept that there's a lot of room for improvement there, right? If you're new in the business and you're trying to decide where you should be putting your effort, hopefully this podcast is steering you in the right direction, because within 5 years, if you've done it correctly, almost all of your closed transaction leads will have come from centers of influence and past clients. That means, guys, largely, as you're building your business, obviously centers of influence, as we've discussed, are going to come from just the people not necessarily past real estate clients, but you can build it even faster by doing the proactive lead generation. That's how these things fit hand in glove. So we definitely want you, if Jules and I were to get back into the real estate business, selling real estate, that is, we would definitely go after expireds. Depending on the market, we might have to go after for sale by owners. But I promise you, we would definitely pile into centers of influence and past clients. It's the easiest business that frankly requires the least amount of skill, and it's the most fun.
It is by far the most fun. I do probably 10x. And I tell coaching clients,
for sure,
because it does take a little while to build, but it's very much worth it because you have no money involved. You have no expenditure. You should do about 10x what you think. Even if you're a little bit nervous, maybe more introverted, whatever, you can find ways to, participate in things that make sense for you. And I do think this is the fun part of the business. After all, I always tell this story. Everybody's had this experience. You look at some agent in your office, you're like, that is a beautiful, amazing new listing. How did they get that? It probably was not a door-knocked FSBO.
Just make this point, right? It's what I said yesterday. You're going to have to remember the numbers for me because I won't remember, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to hire a roofer. I did this yesterday. Pay attention. You have to hire a roofer to fix a leak in your roof. What are you going to do? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, who do I know? Who do I know that's a roofer? Maybe you've used them in the past. Maybe you know them from, church. Doesn't matter. And if you don't know somebody, or if you haven't used someone in the past, then you're going to ask a trusted friend or advisor for a reference on who they should be using as a roofer, right? Isn't that what you're going to do? You're going to ask your neighbor. You're going to ask somebody, again, maybe from church. Who do you know that's a trustworthy roofer? Then, and only then, if you don't know someone and if you can't find a center of influence, past client, trusted friend, or advisor sort to give you a reference for a roofer, only then are you going to respond to any kind of marketing or a branding or advertising
online
message
or off,
or a billboard or whatever, right? That's how you operate. That's how every human operates. That's how humans have always operated and always will operate. I don't care what AI rolls around. People are still going to be making their decision making through those sets of filters. 92% of all decisions about who you're going to use to hire to fix your roof. And Julie, what are the two groups? Do you remember the numbers?
The first number of people you already know, it always ranges between 83 and 85%. Then another 8 to 10% are a trusted friend or advisor, leaving you with just that last 10% that may or may not respond to any kind of online or offline marketing. And remember, too, let's say that is somebody that's in that 10%. That doesn't mean they're responding to your postcard. Doesn't mean they're responding to your TikTok video. It could just be to anybody's or multiple ones that they're going to make to compete.
And generally speaking, those types of bought leads, marketing and advertising and literally buying leads are the grouchiest ones to deal with.
Yes.
Because they have no personal relationship with you. That you don't share a referral source in common. Like, guys, you know what I'm saying here? They're the most expensive. They're the most crotchety to work with. They're going to make you compete. They're going to ask you to cut your commission. They're going to do all these kinds of things. Whereas if you just tune your brain into the reality that 92% of your business, if you're doing it correctly, is going to come from centers of influence and past clients. And those leads don't cost you anything.
No, and they're also nicer to you.
The cost of maybe a newsletter, and if you're going to do a charity event here and there, but you can get those things underwritten. Are you really excited and motivated by what we're telling you? You should be, because it is called something that all of you have been in constant search for since you got your licenses. It's called the truth.
Yes, lead generation truth for all of you. Okay. So the first thing to build your center of influence and your database was things you like to do anyway. We talked about that. The second one is business networking. I call it networking for the sake of networking. This is like Business Network International, BNI. It's Chamber of Commerce, Toastmasters, Entrepreneurs Club, Investors Clubs, and so forth. Again, you can find those on meetup.com. All right, and then the next one, category C, we talked about a little bit, charitable events, auctions, food drives, toy drives, fundraisers, school and church events. One of the things that we do is the fill the backpack with school supplies things for some of the local schools. There's an endless supply of charitable events you can find through schools, through churches, online.
Churches are making a massive comeback. If you're not going to church, you definitely want to, remember how to
try some out and go what feels right to you.
Exactly.
Okay, so moral of the story, get into the habit of immediately adding those new contacts to your smartphone contacts, then emailing their name to yourself so you can get them into your CRM. Add a note in your contacts to remind yourself how you met them. That way, when you're, calling them, you remember something about them. Sherry Seller, met at Orange Theory, married, 3 kids, and a fish named Bob, moved to Austin from Chicago. That way, next time I call Sherry the seller, I'm already thinking of it as a listing lead, right? I'm going to say, hey, how's Bob the fish? How are your workouts at Orange Theory? Instead of, where do I know you from?
Or even better, you know her at Orange Theory because you see her 3 days of the week.
Even better. Absolutely. So remember, for this to be a predictable and duplicatable source of business, you have to make more contact more frequently to achieve that flow of leads. Again, we've given you some tools, especially Premier Coaching clients. Refer to the 12-month Center of Influence plan to further systematize, as well as that center of influence, building, the list of questions.
So do you feel educated? Yes, you do. I know you do. If not, download our notes, become a subscriber to our free newsletter.
And do the notes.
Yes. Do you feel motivated? I bet you do, because you're realizing you can do all these things and it's basically free and it's fun. Now it's up to you to get into action. Thank you for keeping this one of the most downloaded daily podcasts for real estate professionals in the world. Please do like and subscribe, and remember to give us a 5-star review if you think we merit it over on iTunes. Have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.